Alright, so we're checking out the happy model Mobula6 Race HD. This is the third iteration of their Mobula6 with HDZero in it. And the first two were kind of underwhelming. You saw those on my channel earlier. I'll link those videos down in the video description in case you missed those. The first one was basically like a Mobula6 with the 0802 motors and had the full whoop HDZero VTX and camera with the MIPI cable, and it came in like at 23.9 grams, so kind of heavy, and performance was not so great. As I said, pretty underwhelming. And the second version, they went with the 0702 motors and the Eco camera, so it's a new camera. It's a little bit lighter and lighter motors, but it was not that much lighter overall, so only 23.4 grams for that version. And so they went back to the drawing board and made a very light version now for anything that has HDZero in it. It is about 19.1 grams here. I'll show you that on a scale in a second. And that is actually lighter than what the original Mobula6 from 4 years ago, I believe. Or 5 years ago. It's like December of 2019 is when that came out. So about 5 years ago, the original Mobula6 analog was heavier than that. I think it was like a little over 20 grams. So this one's coming in a gram lighter than that. So here is what it weighs on my scale here. Yep, a little over 19.15 grams. And then the battery I used was this Beta FPV Lava 300 milliamp hour. And altogether it is 27.29 grams, 27.3 grams. Now in terms of flight times, this 300 milliamp hour is going to give you roughly 3 minutes, give or take. If you're flying more aggressively than what you see in my flight footage, it's going to be closer to 2 minutes, maybe less. And if you're flying pretty aggressive, like full throttle, freestyle, outdoors, in windy conditions, you can definitely get this thing to burn the battery down in 1.5 to 2 minutes. So it really depends on your flight style. If you're going slower than me, maybe you can get more than 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes on this 300 milliamp hour Lava LiPo. Now, I was getting worse flight times on my Tattoo LiPos. They're very similar to these Lavas, but they're older. So when I was flying with those, also very similar in weight, the 300 milliamp hour, I was getting about 30 seconds less flight time. But those are quite a bit older and have a lot more flight time, a lot more flights on them than the Lava LiPos. So I went with the Lava LiPos because they're newer. It'll give you a better sense of what the true flight time is going to be for this. So in terms of what you get in here, obviously the big deal on this model is the all-in-one 5 or the AIO 5 from HDZero. So they basically collaborated with Happy Model, and they combined the flight controller plus the VTX into a single board. So I'm just going to put up a couple of pictures here of the top and bottom of the board because obviously it's installed in here. It's a little hard to see. Don't really feel like tearing the whole thing apart and desoldering the motors. Kind of need to do that to basically get it out. But by combining the VTX plus the flight controller, they now have got this weight down to 19.1 grams, which is great. Now the receiver in here, while it is Express LRS, it is an SPI receiver. We aren't on the latest beta flight. It's 442 on this version here versus 451 is the latest version. And while it does have 442 beta flight, it is Express LRS 3.x compatible. But again, it is SPI based. So for those of you that are like, well, it's SPI based, that's a deal breaker, I'm not going to get it. No, it is what it is. So in order to get this weight down, in order to cram all of that stuff onto one single board, they had to get rid of, I think, the ESP32 chip, which is basically that code is now baked into Betaflight for the SPI functions. Something had to be sacrificed. I don't think, given current technology today, it's possible to cram that much more stuff in here. It's a 14-layer board, that's my understanding. It's got they got a lot of stuff going on in here. It's kind of remarkable, kind of a kind of amazing that they crammed so much stuff in here. Still have a micro USB port here in the back, and they kind of pushed it way off to the side here. As you can see, they had to cut the frame to accommodate this micro USB port. So there's something to keep in mind. It is, a little bit weaker here, but obviously they pushed everything off to the edges, and all the motors, they are soldered right on the edge of the board here. So basically they're using the actual side of the board because it's so thick to accommodate other things, to solder things, I think mainly the motors. So there's the Express LS antenna here, and this is your VTX antenna. It's a little bit thinner gauge wire here on this one. And you can judge for yourself my video footage. I am using the Emacs video monitor receiver for HDZero. It is not the greatest, but I don't have access to the HDZero goggles. I'm told time and time again in my HDZero videos that I really should be reviewing these HDZero VTXs with the HDZero goggles. Fortunately, I don't have $600 sitting around in my sofas, so can't quite get one of those yet, unfortunately. So you're going to have to deal with the footage that I have to show here. Still have the Eco camera here on this canopy. I think this is a modified version of the canopy from before. They have the basically there's a screw hole here on this corner and one on this corner here, and it's a little bit crooked, and you'll notice in the footage that the right duct is a little higher than the left duct, and I think that is because these wires, these cables right here for the Lux camera or the Eco camera here, they go over here, they're soldered onto the board right there, and then the canopy sits on top of them. So it kind of pushes this canopy a little bit higher on the left side, which makes this duct show up a little bit higher over here. And I did try and kind of push it over, but it apparently I need to probably shove like a piece of foam or something under this side to lift up this side. And the angle is kind of on the lower end, so it's going to be better for you guys that like flying slower. If you want to fly faster, you just have to use one of these other holes here, probably move it up 1 or 2 spots, and then that will give you more camera angle if you want to go faster. I think these are the same 0702 motors from before. They're the 28,000 kV 0702s from Happy Model, the black and red can. And then we have the HQ ultralight props, of course. That's kind of the go-to these days. And they are using the nylon plastic screws on this one to save a little bit of weight. I think the weight difference between the plastic screws and the metal screws is about 0.5 gram. And then they are using the A20 connector here and using this the 180-degree method to keep this length of cable as short as possible to keep the weight down. And not too many places you can reduce weight here. Probably maybe get rid of this heat shrink here that's on the motor wires. Maybe shorten this a little bit, but yeah, this is about as optimized as it's going to be for this setup. Now there is another version of this one here. I don't know if it's still called the Race HD because I think it's meant more for freestyle, but it has a different camera. So everything else is the same frame, motors, props, of course the HDZero AI05. A little bit different canopy and camera. So they have another HDZero camera. It's called the Lux camera. So this is the Eco camera. It's the same camera that was out before, which is this sort of hybrid digital analog. It's not a full digital because it doesn't have the MIPI cable. And then they have a new version of this camera with a little bit wider field of view and sort of, I think it's got better low light handling. It's called the Lux camera. It's a little bit heavier. So I think that version is like 0.5 gram heavier than this one. I don't have that, unfortunately. That I guess I could test it out by buying the camera and the canopy for this, and I could swap it out. And if you want to see a video of that, let me know. I could just swap the camera out. The camera's like, I think $55 just for the camera. So let me know in the comments if that interests you. Now, overall, in terms of the flight footage, this flies pretty similarly to stuff that weighs around 19 grams. It's kind of funny. It doesn't matter whether you're flying digital or analog. You basically are flying what this thing weighs, because you're dealing with the same sort of 0702 motors and around a this sort of same 31 millimeter propeller. So the general flight feel is pretty much the same. It's all really based on the weight, and they of course tuned tuned it pretty well. I can't really complain too much. I didn't really get to do too much freestyle with this one. It's been crazy windy lately, so I couldn't really fly this outside. If you want to see some freestyle on this one outdoors on a calm day, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I can put together a video, and I'll link that down in the video description. But yeah, don't know if a lot of people are buying this specific setup for tiny whip freestyle outdoors. I can't really do this kind of freestyle indoors. My house is just too small, so I have to do it outside, but it's been too windy lately. So if that interests you, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and do something in the future and then link that down in the video description. But yeah, I can't complain too much, it's a lot better than the first two versions of the HDZero Mobula6. Got more flight time now, of course, better performance, so a lot of things to be happy about. Whether or not this board is going to be more durable in the long run, hard to say. I, of course, had a few minor crashes in the house as usual. No problems yet. Hasn't just not. This VTX still works, unlike the last one that I reviewed with the Eco camera. That one died after a crash. So, supposedly by combining the VTX and the flight controller all together, a lot of people are saying that the durability has improved versus having a separate VTX and flight controller. So, hard to say if that's true or not. I will obviously keep flying this here and there and see how this holds up. Generally speaking, most of the HDZero stuff that I've had, if I had a bad crash, they pretty much have died. So I haven't had a bad crash from this one yet, but we'll see. Maybe if I do some freestyle outdoors and have a nasty crash, we'll see how it holds up. But overall, yeah, definitely A+ on all this. I think I might do a conversion of this at some point, maybe put this to a 75mm. I think that would be better for freestyle because it's still at 19 grams, a little bit heavier compared to something like, 16 grams or 16.5 grams. Those are going to be way easier to freestyle than something that's a little bit heavier like this. And then, maybe even putting this into this board and camera into like a 2-inch micro or something like that, or 2.5-inch micro might be pretty fun. Obviously, you're still dealing with the 5 amp ESCs on here, and that's a limitation. But if it's just 1S, if you keep it really light, you might be able to get away with a 65mm bi-blade propeller. So something possibly worth checking out. This board by itself is $100, so something to keep in mind. But it, if you combine the board with the camera, I think this camera here is like $40 or $34 or $40, so it's not cheap. But if you were looking for an HDZero setup on a micro, this board might not be a bad choice for something, like with some pretty good performance on 1S, if you keep it really, really light. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Got any questions, let me know down in the comments below. Talk to you guys in the next one.